can't remember what other ones are coming up.
Okay, so we're 7 o'clock and we're going to start our webinar now. And I'd like to introduce Steve Bushnick from Velux Skylights. Stephen, and I'll turn it over to him and he will start our webinar.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks everyone for taking some time out of your evening and taking some time to learn about skylights and to learn about what to look for at skylights. Kind of take a broad view of how to look at skylights and view them, but we're going to go over some of the products so you can help identify it. I'm going to give you hopefully a good tool. So if you guys know how to use the QR reader later in the presentation, you'll be able to screenshot a QR code to be able to get a document that I think will be key to you helping you identify skylights and have some critical information. We're going to talk about why skylights are important, about the product, and about things to look for when you're looking at a home with skylights on it. So did anyone know this, that the name Velux actually has a very essential meaning to what we do and what we kind of present skylights as? It's from the Latin. It means ventilation and light. And the biggest task as a sales rep for Velux is to get people to understand the beginning of our name, the V. A lot of people like to put a fixed skylight in and they forget about the V, and people like, I just want a fixed Velux skylight. And I'm like, so you're just looking for the Lux. You're not looking for the V. We need to get them to understand what ventilation is and how it's important to the home. And we'll touch on that tonight. But just give you a background. In 1975, we came to Woburn, Massachusetts, a company out of Denmark, and then we moved down to Greenwood, South Carolina. Natural resources and labor pool was rich for us down there, and that was our first building in the U.S. that we actually owned. That building still exists today in the center of this large campus, 7 production plants, soon to be 8, a large distribution center. By the end of this year, we should be eclipsing 700,000 square foot of space for our products.
Sorry about
Looking
that.
at, that's all right. Multiple shifts, multiple production runs, and we're growing to kind of keep up with the demand. And we do a lot. Every building now has solar farm on it, and of course across the street we have the solar farm that helps run it to keep us a little bit more sustainable and hopefully kind of cut the cost down by using the sun's energy instead of tapping into the grid. So it's kind of a background of where we came from and where we are and where we're pushing forward to. But as I mentioned, we want to talk about why daylight and fresh air. What is important in a home with daylight and fresh air? You know, skylights, first of all, offer twice as much daylight as vertical windows. Lighting the core of a space is key, and sun is very important to your own personal health. A lack of daylight can cause sleep disturbances, stress, obesity, fatigue, depression, amongst other things that could really affect your lifestyle and your living. And as you can see, as you get to the core of the building, skylights bring the light in and keep it at a bright factor towards the core better than anything else. And that's why we kind of feel it's very important to use skylights in critical design. But fresh air is important because, as you guys know, dealing with a home, they're making the energy codes and the building codes more and more stringent. You're taping seams on plywood on the roof. You're trapping mold, moisture, air to get it more energy efficient, which is great for energy efficiency. But what it does, it doesn't allow the home to breathe. Think about where all the pollutants come from in a home. Think about taking a shower, cooking anything. Think about washers and dryers, secondhand smoke, pets, anything like that can cause pollution into a home. Where does it go? If there's not a way to ventilate it, it'll get trapped in the home, get sucked in the drywall. Now we're talking about instances of mold and other types of damage in the home because we didn't ventilate it. Skylights are the natural way to ventilate it. We all know moisture gets trapped in the warm air, and that warm, moist air goes up. Skylights, you open them up, you allow the space to vent, and you let that space be able to breathe. You let more fresh air come into the home. How would you guys feel if I told you that a recent study came out that said the average air quality inside of a home is 2 times worse than a major U.S. city? So you think about the air quality in like a Los Angeles, a Chicago, Boston, or New York, and you're like, wow, the air quality is bad there. But then you think about my home is 2 times worse than that on average because the lack of ventilation in a home. So it's key to the health of a home and the health of its inhabitants to be able to get that house to breathe in a natural way to refresh that space. So now you can live in a healthier atmosphere. Um, so when we're talking about skylights with homeowners, what do you guys think the number one perception of skylights is?
That they leak.
Absolutely. You hear that all the time. And I'm going to tell you, it's true for older skylights. We just didn't have the right methods for installation. And that's why we came out with the no leak skylight. We firmly believe that the skylights of today will not leak if installed properly. Okay. So there's 3 layers of water protection. There's number 1 on the slide here is our deck seal. Number 2 is the adhesive underlayment that wraps all 4 sides of the skylight. And number 3 is our engineered flashing that gets interwoven with the roofing material to keep out water. Okay, so we're trying to mitigate water as best as possible because we know water can create damage inside the home. And that's why we also offer a 10-year no leak warranty on our skylights against water infiltration direct to the homeowner. Now, being as big as we are in New England, we have the advantage of Velux employed service techs that take care of all these issues if they do arise. And they're out there inspecting and repairing, making sure people are doing things properly to install them, and fixing all those issues if there is, and being able to give that homeowner a new perception that skylights don't leak and that we could feel good about keeping the skylights on a home and reaping the benefits and the rewards of it. Okay. So the rest of our warranty, just so you guys know, it's 20 years on glass against seal failure, 10 years on the rest of the product, like frame and cladding and things like that. 5 years on any of our electronic components. And again, that 10-year no leak installation warranty, I think, is very key to give that homeowner that peace of mind that if there ever is an instance that happens, we're backed up for 10 years by Velux. The manufacturer will take care of it directly.
Does that include labor, Steve, or there is a labor cost at that point? You just replace the thermal paint.
If it's within the 10 years, that labor is included.
Okay.
Yeah. Our service techs will replace that sash with that glass if there's a problem. And they'll do what they need to take care of that. So yeah, there is labor included in that. And it's not a 10-year that diminishes over time. It's straight 10-year, everything included. Okay.
Perfect.
So we have 3 different types of skylights. 2 of them we use pretty religiously here in the Northeast. One of them is more of a Southeast and Midwest market skylight. So we'll kind of glaze over that one, but we're predominantly what we call deck mount market. These are skylights that nail or screw directly to the roof deck. Okay. So they go right on the roof deck. A 312 pitch or higher is required to keep the warranty on this. And this is the typical skylight we see in New England. The secondary skylight we see is a curb mount. These can go completely flat. So a home that has a flat roof or a commercial roof that needs a skylight, these go completely flat. And these can go all the way up to a 2012 pitch with the curb mount. So if for you that are not available or familiar with the curb mount, on a curb mount unit, you will build a lumber curb 2x4, 2x6, whatever. Usually on a flat roof, it's a 2x8 or higher. Lumber box on edge. And then you take the skylight, think of it as a lid of a shoebox. Once that curb is fastened to the roofing system, and flashed in. You take this curb mount skylight, put it on top like the lid of a shoebox, screw it in from the sides, and your install is complete. And again, it installs that way as opposed to nailing to the roof deck because of the way it's made and the way it mitigates water and can go completely flat. So that's a great solution for that low slope porch roof or a flat roof on a home. And then the one that is used mostly, like I said, the East and the Midwest is our self-flash skylights. You don't have to buy a separate flashing kit. It's got it all incorporated into it. It uses mastic to adhere it to the roof deck, and then you nail it down. Not a lot of skylights you run into are going to be self-flashed in the Northeast, though. So primarily deck mount with a curb mount used in other applications.
Hey, we had a question from Gary. After a warranty repair, does the warranty start over, or is it just run out the 10 years?
Runs out the 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Good question, though. So let's dive in a little bit more in depth into deck mount skylights. Integral frame installed directly to the roof deck. Like I said, a 312 pitch. This can go all the way up to an 85 degree. So like your mansard roofs, you can use skylights as your windows in a mansard roof. And they all have flashing kits that correspond with them. And doing that qualifies for the 10-year no leak. We have our solar powered skylight, which we firmly believe gives the best value to the homeowner and a best skylight experience. Gets you be able to open and close it with the use of a remote, using green energy to be able to power it, and that will qualify for tax credit. You have the electric venting skylight, great for new construction if they needed it. Not really used a lot. It's less than 5% of what we sell in the U.S. market right now. But then we have our manual venting skylights, and then of course our fixed skylights as options for homeowners. And same function for the curb mount, but like I said before, it goes to a 0 pitch all the way up to a 2012 or a 60 degree. You'll hear whenever you talk to someone from Velux, you hear us flip-flop between degrees and pitch because they use degrees in Europe and they've kind of conditioned us that way. But so you're going to have your solar, electric, your manual, and your fixed skylight in a curb mount function also. And if they're installed, again, according to the Velux instructions, qualify for that 10-year no leak warranty. So let's talk about how we identify a Velux skylight, and we'll show later pictures of non-Velux skylights and how to identify them. The biggest thing about a Velux skylight is the top of the unit. That unique upstand at the top of the skylight that accepts the head flashing. It's designed to shed water. So if you look at the bottom picture here, it's kind of a bulky looking head to the skylight. That is a huge indicator that it's Velux. We're the only ones that ever did that. The top picture is a current generation. You can see it still stands proud of the unit. You can see it stands tall of it. Because of that, that's a key indicator that it's a Velux skylight. So from the ground, driving up to the house, you can look up there and see it and be like, hey, I know that's a Velux. I know that we're going to be able to get some information on it very easily and very quickly. All right. Another thing is the perimeter cladding on the unit is removable on a Velux. All the other manufacturers do not have or never did have any type of removable cladding. And we etch our brand name onto the corner of our glass. If you look in the corner, kind of like you guys might be familiar with Anderson, how they put the AW on their glass. Well, Velux puts the Velux name on the corner of the glass. Or in our spacer, we also put what we call our Vel term number. So you'll be able to get that type of information off the glass if you can get to the skylight easily and look for that information. So that's a couple ways to identify it's a Velux skylight when you're looking at them very easily, very quickly, identifiers. Okay. Also, on our deck mount units, we have this silver tag. This silver tag will be able to tell you the function or model and our size. This example, it's an FS104, which is an old call size, which is now C04. But that gives you all the information you need, and that's actually the homeowner's warranty too. So you'll be able to look that up. I'm going to give you guys a tool in a minute here, the tool I told you about, that is going to help you identify the age of these skylights, whether it's still in warranty, or kind of what glass it is, what model size it is. So if you're going down the path of recommending a replacement, we'll be able to identify it and figure it out from there. But all of our models, since we've been in the US, have this silver tag on it. Older ones might have been the printed ones, and maybe someone took them off or painted over it. That's why we also have it in the glass spacer on our skylights. If you don't have the tag and you need to measure, there's a couple ways to measure. First one, not my preferred one, is you can measure the complete height and width of the unit from the outside of the cladding. This measurement is usually an inch bigger than the outside frame dimension in our literature. The second one is the height and width of the exposed glass. If you don't have any of our literature, you don't have access to it where you are, you can measure the exposed glass. This measurement can be either plugged into our skylight replacement calculator, which is found on our website, or you can call Velux customer service and say, I'm looking at a skylight. This is the exposed glass measurement I have, and I know it's a Velux, and they will tell you what size it is based on that, and they'll be able to give you some information. So they're always willing to help you on that, and you're always welcome to call into customer service to, if you can't get a hold of me, you can call customer service to get some of this information. Now, my preferred method, I'm not a big fan of getting up on the roof all the time, is to go inside and measure drywall to drywall. Typically, this measurement is about an inch smaller than the rough opening dimension because we're assuming it's half-inch drywall. So you kind of measure drywall to drywall, and that gets you a rough estimate of the what the rough opening is. And so you'll be able to help identify the skylight that way. Okay. That's my preferred method because I'm really not a big fan of crawling around on the roof all the time. But if you do get up on the roof, you can do the other two methods. When you're measuring a curb mount, it's a little different because the dimensions you need is a little bit different. Usually on the inside of a curb mount, you're not going to see a wood frame on the inside. It's going to be mostly finished drywall on the inside, so you help identify it that way. If brand will be etched on the glass at one of the corners. On a curb mount, it's etched on the outside corner of the actual frame. So unless you get onto the roof, you won't be able to find this because it's etched on the outside. Up to note, like in this one, it says DCS 2222. 2222 is the size. If it says FCM 9999, you know you're looking at a custom size and it's something you have to take some critical dimensions on. Those critical dimensions are going to be the actual curb dimension. There are many other manufacturers that make curb mounts. I left this picture in because Wasco, which we now own, made some curb mount units that are still out there, and these are kind of what they look like. A little bit more of a boxier with sharp corners, and usually the unit and the flashing are different colors in this instance. So measuring these curb mounts, most common mistake is measuring the frame of the skylight. What we really need for a critical dimension is the outside curb itself, the box. So I would encourage you to measure down close to the shingles as best as possible to get that outside curb dimension. Then we can figure out the skylight unit from there. Of course, you can do my method is go inside. Again, the drywall open and close to the skylights, it's generally an inch smaller to get you that rough opening. Think about it this way: you drywall the drywall at 2 inches per side, and that gets you the outside of curb. You know, your 4-inch outside to outside critical dimension. Is
there a minimum roof pitch for a skylight?
It depends on what type of skylight. So a curb mount can go completely flat.
Okay.
A deck mount has to be a 312 minimum.
Just explain a little bit about that curb mount. Like, what's the difference again, Steve?
Yeah, a curb mount is mounted on top of a box made out of framing lumber. So you're going to build like, let me go back to this picture here. You can see it where the arrows are. That is flashing on top of a curb. So the curb is lumber frame built to size. that is now mounted to the roof deck and then flashed in appropriately.
Can be
For your
2x6, 2x8, right? You can make it any size, that curb, right? Or is it specific?
Yeah, I
2x8?
mean, 2x12 if you want. I mean, I've seen all sorts of curb depth dimensions based on roofing material, roof pitch, things like that. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
then the curb mount goes on like the lid of a shoebox. Okay. So guys, we have what's called a skylight measurement guide. This is a kind of, think of it as the Velux Bible. This is got all the critical dimensions for you to be able to help figure it out. If all the other identifiers on our skylights are missing, you'll be able to reference this. So this QR code, and I'll leave this up here for a minute for you guys to scan. We'll be able to get this electronically for you guys. It's also found on our website. This is available in English and Spanish on our website. This has all the critical dimensions from all of our standard units available for you guys to reference. And you'll be able to look up kind of what you're looking at. You took a couple dimensions and you say, well, this is my drywall to drywall, my outside to outside, and be able to reference it and say, this is what we're kind of looking at for sizing. So if you have to make a recommendation for, hey, this is kind of what size I think, and I really recommend replacement because of the age of it or the condition, it'll help you. Was there a question?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. So here's an example of what's found in that skylight measurement guide. This is how to read our tags. The most critical thing on this tag is if you look at the silver tag and where it, number 5 circles those 2 letters, and that says BA, that is our year code. So in this example, BA, you look it up at the year code in the middle, and it says 2011. So if you're up looking at a skylight and you see that tag and you see those letters, you can tell the homeowner, hey, by the way, those skylights are this age. You know, generally, if you're 10 years or newer, you can recommend, hey, you're probably pretty good. If you're, or realistically, we could say from 2011 and newer, because that's a newer skylight, newer era with the no leak skylight. But I mean, I was on a job site about 2 months ago where they had one that had the letter H, which is 1986. And the homeowner's like, I'm not going to replace it. And I'm like, that's from 1986. It's well past its lifespan. And it's ready to fail. But this page is in that document, that skylight measurement guide, where you guys can be able to access that. And also on the right side, it tells you how to read the Velterm numbers that are between the glass. So you'll be able to tell what age it is. You won't be able to get the size information on most of them, but you'll be able to get the age of it, and you can educate the homeowner. This is how old this skylight is. I think it's very critical, especially if you guys are doing inspections, to tell the homeowner, hey, these are old. They're going to fail eventually, sooner than later, depending on the age. So you can at least give that information to your homeowner.
But what are the standard life cycles for, like, what should you expect out of it? 20 years?
Yeah, older generation, I would say 20 years. Our current generation, which is 2011 and on, you realistically could see 25 to 30 years. Wow. Right now, what we're putting out there, we're figuring 25 to 30 year lifespan with the skylights. But if you're older than 2011, we're going to start talking about replacement. We're going to start talking about you're at the end of its lifespan.
So we have a client with an old roof with multiple skylights. That's the time to do it, right, Steve?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. You never want to leave an old skylight when you're doing the re-roof project. Think about it this way. When you're re-roofing the house, you're pretty much scalping the house, and it is a large intrusive project to the most critical part of the house, the roof, and because that keeps all the water away and it protects the inhabitants and all the belongings. And you think about people throwing 80-pound bundles of shingles, bunch of people walking around scraping shingles off. Old skylights, butyl tape, all dried out. You're shaking it. You're creating a intrusion of integrity into that old skylight. If they don't replace it when they replace that roof, you're really asking for a problem to occur. You're better off replacing it when you re-roof. Absolutely. Deck mount skylights, we have critical dimensions that document like this. So you can measure inside frame, inside finish, outside frame. You can kind of compare, hey, look, I measured my inside finish. It's, 28.5 by 44.25. Hey, that lines up to an MO6 inside finish dimension. I could tell the client this is kind of the sizing, and figure some of those things out as you go down the path of making recommendations to them of what you see and what you're kind of up against. So
sorry to interrupt. We had a question about life cycles. When you talk about the lifespan, is it due to fogging glass or leak issues?
It's kind of a mix. The glass will last, most likely will last the 20 years. Sometimes the material, especially on the older than 2011, we just didn't have a way that flashed it in properly. And our old skylights were attached with a clip that left a gap between the skylight and the roof deck, as opposed to now we have that deck seal. And sometimes that material that sealed off that gap deteriorates and just gets old, and that creates a problem. And the units just fail. The butyl tape around the glass fails. Water comes in through that. Water has a mind of its own. It'll come right through. So all that's different things can fail. So it's kind of a mix, to be honest with you, is what we see.
Thank you.
Yep. And that kind of brings up a point before I go any further is our older skylights we used to sell butyl tape and replacement glass, and you used to be able to reglaze old skylights. We no longer sell the butyl tape or the replacement glass because we were just finding people weren't doing it correctly. It was creating bigger problems. It was not what we thought was best for the home either, because you're just taking an old energy efficient, inefficient frame, leaving it on the home and reglazing it. So we no longer offer that. And so there's some people that will call and try to do that on their own, but we really suggest replacement over reglazing on some of our older stuff. Okay.
Okay.
So some of the older version of skylights, Velux Skylights, you can see them. They have the exposed screws sticking up. The flashing had a tendency to discolor on the bottom, as you can see on this one. They still had that proud head, though, that large head, pronounced head that you can really tell it's a Velux unit. So always look for that head to start with. Other skylights that are no longer made and should be replaced. Old Velux deck mount skylights. There are roto is the second picture here. That's what a roto looked like. All four sides profile wise look the same, and it had this water diverter sticking out of the back. Anything that's a Pella is no longer made. No parts or pieces available. And then on the far right is the Anderson deck mount skylight. Profile is the same all the way around. You can tell it's an Anderson. It tended to look like this kind of the Anderson Terratone color, or even really turn white, and kind of has that water diverter. So if you run into those, you're really looking at something that no parts and pieces are manufactured. You're going to really look at suggesting replacement because of age and because of lack of support out in the field. Okay. So some pictures here of some other stuff you run into. Top left is a Anderson with the water diverter. The middle one's an Anderson roof window. You can see that hinge that sticks out. a Roto, and a couple other brands here. So you can learn as you realize the tendency of what a Velux looks like with that proud head, as opposed to these that are kind of the same look all the way around. You can start identifying it and knowing. And if you see that it's not a Velux, you're starting to talk replacement and age, and then you're starting to start thinking, how old is the roof? You need, and a lot of this, and a lot of what I do when I look at skylights and people ask me to help them look, I'm just doing this from the ground. I'm looking up at it and I go, well, we can tell because it doesn't have these certain features that we're talking replacement, we're talking old. Let's start getting measurements to talk about replacement and our options. So Pella and Roto, they kind of look the same. And the Andersons would kind of go white or yellow like these. They'd have the one on the left is a fixed, the one on the right is a roof window with a screen on the inside that kind of slides so you can grab the handle to open it. But these are kind of, you know, I think the picture on the right, if you looked at the roof deck too, you're talking about old age, you're talking about replacement, you're talking about old roof system. We're kind of focusing in on stuff about we're going to start telling that the roof's aged on these. So will it work? There's some odd, even if it's a Velux, there's some odd installations that you're going to find on the left. You know, they would build a kind of a strange curve, put it on the pitch it needs to be on a flat roof. Not really recommended. We used to sell a kit like that, but we don't anymore because we found it was a problem. So anything like that, you're going to recommend stripping this down to the roof deck, putting something on that complete hole that works for the roof pitch. On the right is a huge problem that I see all the time. If you notice, the hole of the skylight, the actual skylight shaft, is a lot smaller than the actual skylight put over it. What happens here is that area that you see of exposed roof deck will deteriorate very fast, because what's going to happen is heat's going to get trapped up there. As you guys know, you're going to get condensation up there. It's going to get on the roof deck. You're going to cause rot. You're going to cause a big problem on your roof. So if you do see this, like if you look up at a skylight and all you see is glass, no frame from the inside, but you know there's a skylight out there with a frame, you're going to start asking, is this skylight the wrong size for the opening, and what kind of problems do we have on the roof deck? I've seen it where that roof deck is very spongy because of water infiltration from the condensation, and it creates a big problem. So keep an eye out for something like that when you're just in the house looking up through the skylight. Besides looking for a seal fit or seeing, do I actually see frame or just all glass, and then trying to figure it out from there. So from the ground, you don't want to see any shingles across the sill flashing. It's caused damming of the water. You want to see an exposed, the last course of shingles underneath the actual flashing on the bottom. So this course of shingles pointed out here should be underneath this flashing. And you're going to start learning about gapping. And, you know, if you guys ever have a critical time, you could always ask me to come out and look at things. We can peek at different installations if you ever need a recommendation and help. Like in this, the sill piece was put on one course of shingles too late, so it creates gaps where water can come in. Head flashing put on too late. There's no course of shingles across the top of the head flashing, so it's going to cause a problem. It's going to cause a tendency for water infiltration because it's not lapped over it. Or are the shingles too close to the skylight? You don't want them tight. You want it on the head. You want it 4 inches back. So if you can see a gap there, you should be fine. If you ever look up at a skylight, and you might already know this, but I say this because sometimes when I'm dealing with the roofing trade, they don't even realize this. If you look up and you see tar anywhere, or silicone or any other type of sealant around a skylight, you could venture a guess that there was a problem. There was a leak before, and they put a Band-Aid on it. And that Band-Aid still might be working, but you know it was a problem, so they didn't really fix it appropriately. So we want to address that and bring that up to the homeowner.
Now, Steve, a lot of times, can you go? I mean, a lot of times, sometimes we see a lot of staining on the inside, and correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes that's just maybe the seals failed, maybe it's condensation. It doesn't always necessarily mean that the what are some indications condensation versus the actual skylight from your experience that we can see on the inside when we look up? What would be more indication of a leak versus sometimes it's condensation? It's hard to tell either way. You still make note, but is there certain things that you can tell a little?
Yeah, I tend to take a quick scan of the house. If you see a lot of plants, someone's on oxygen, other indicators of anything that creates a lot of humidity in the home, and you see water stains on the glass, you can kind of go down the road of condensation. If you see a lot of black staining on the wood, a lot of our old skylights were bare wood. So if you see a lot of black staining or just kind of soft, brittle wood, but no water stains on the glass, you're going to start thinking about leakage and a problem with leakage from outside coming through into the wood. But I think the one thing we never thought about it until it's happened a couple of times, that when you look around the environment of the home, the plants, the oxygen, how people are living, what's the temperature at compared to outside, if there's a high humidity in there, it's condensation, which still affects the integrity of the unit. But yeah, you kind of have to use your judgment based on each environment and what you're seeing. Generally, water stains on the glass indicate condensation, but if it's a lot of damage to the frame, then that's leak. So,
Thank you.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So, like I said, tar and other mastics, definitely not recommended. It voids a warranty on a Velux Skylight. It's going to eat away at the aluminum and any other materials. And if you see it, you know there was a problem. Or maybe there wasn't a problem. It was just an installer that didn't know what they were doing. And they just figured if we just put, bubble gum and glue on it, it'll make sure it won't leak. So those are good indicators that there's something going on that has to be looked into further. So I don't know if you guys ever really go on the roof and dig this deep. These are some things just to keep in mind. If you were to do an inspection and you were to look at the nails through the flashing and into the roof deck, if you were to lift a little bit of the corner of the shingles, and I know that gets into a hairy spot of disturbing a shingle that might be good until you disturb it. But there's some roofers that do this when they do inspections for insurance. So I bring this up that if you see visible nails and very close to the exposed part of the shingle like this, most likely that's a place where water is going to find its way in, especially when it's on kind of that joint of the profile of the shingle. There shouldn't be any visible through the flashing when the shingles are lifted up for inspection. You shouldn't find any type of nails, and you shouldn't have any exposed nails that go through the flashing on the bottom of the sill. Those are indicators of a future problem. So, I mean, some of this might be secondary for you guys, but look for potential leaks that may show up before you look at the skylight, like exposed nails at the wall, flashing at the transition there. So there's a lot of different instances you could find that might even need to take off part things. You can look at the gapping and the step flashing and how that all fits together. The step piece may need to be cut and bent around. Who knows? But just by looking at it, you can have eyes. Hey, I don't think it's flashed properly. There could be a problem kind of coming forward. And yes, the shingle, we see things like this a lot, actually. There's a lot of people out there that don't really know what they're doing with install. And yes, the flashing needs to be interwoven with the shingles. Believe it or not, we do it sometimes. So you'll find it, you'll see it, you'll laugh and ask, how do they still have a license to do this? Couple things to look at too. Velux has recommended perimeter dimensions for when you're looking at how close they are to a valley or to the peak of the roof or the bottom of the roof. We want about 12 to 16 inches at the top and bottom, and we want 8 inches to the side before you get to like a valley or a pitch transition or anything like that. We don't want it to we don't want to be in there because that's a place where water is going to pool, snow is going to pool. That could lead down the path of having something lead to a problem because of the shape of the roof. And the units aren't going to be able to stand how water, like in this example, this is right on a valley. Water is just going to all run there and it can just pour right at our unit. It's like doing a hose test every time it rains. And it's just not meant to be that close to it. So kind of look at it. How close are you to the peak? How close are you to the sill of the roof? How close are you to the valley? Things like that. You want to make sure we're in a good spot for our units to actually perform the way they're meant to. And if you are on the roof, look to see if there's hail damage, if there's glazing profiles that are damaged, or just from any other type of abuse, possibly. Maybe a branch fell on the house and it didn't make a critical damage on the skylights at the time, so they left what was there. But it damaged the glazing profiles because that's going to lead down the path to future issues and future problems. We use a 50-year silicone right now to seal our glass to the aluminum frame. We firmly believe that it's going to hold up and structurally stand up to general wear and tear and the environment of the roof. But a tree branch, guys, we've seen it, we know it will do a pretty good amount of damage. So you will see that on the glazing profiles if you do go on the roof and take a look at it. Sometimes you see skylights on a lower roof and you're looking at a bedroom window at them and you can see it. There's many times you can get that advantage to do that without climbing on the roof to be able to see it. So it's something really key to look at and something you can recommend to people that, hey, there's some damage there. We're gonna have to talk about, future replacement because of future pending issues with the skylights. So if you guys ever wanted to reach out to me, and at the end, you'll see my email and cell phone number. We do have this reference chart available. This has our old Velux sizes in this first yellow column here, Velux, VES, and prior. So we used to call them like 56 and 101, 104, down to 56 and 5 and all these numbers. In the red on the far left is what we call our sizes now. Now. So CO1, CO4, MO2, MO4, things like that. So we basically got a corresponding chart. We dug up the information we could about Roto and Anderson and Wasco, Insuldome and Starlight. They were major players in the New England market. We've got what their sizes are. So if you do run into like a Roto or an Anderson or Wasco, you can measure that unit as best as you can and get the corresponding size for what ours is. So when you're talking to your clients about, hey, this is what you got, this is what I recommend, this is this kind of the size for Velux, you want to talk to a roofer further about it, but this gives you some start information. I can get this to you guys if you just reach out to me. I have this in a PDF format that you can use to reference and have in your toolbox to kind of just get some better information to your homeowners that you're working with. And that's kind of a general overview of things to look at and the health of a skylight and why skylights are important. Does anyone have any general questions or questions about anything I discussed?
Well, what we see a lot, maybe you can comment on it, is when we're doing the inspection, I'll look at the skylight and I'll see that the shingles to the left and right of the skylight start curling up because either they're not installed correctly, not cut correctly. If they were installed incorrectly, it's nothing the skylight's doing. It's just improper installation of the shingle. Should they be installed? Should the roofer be installing from the skylight out or from the edge of the roof into the skylight?
Edge, we normally see it, and it's okay either way, but we normally see edge of the roof into the skylight. It's critical that you don't want to have the shingles tight against the skylight because of general movement. And also we want a water channel. So we usually ask for about a half inch between the skylight and the edge of the shingle. So if you don't see that little half-inch gap between the skylight and the edge of the shingle and they're tight up against it, that could be a reason why you're getting that curling, because it's moving and pushing and it's just kind of moved itself based on environment.
We have another question from Ron. Can the glass be changed if it fogs, or you just suggest replacing the entire skylight?
Good question. So if it's a 2011 or newer, you would get a sash and you can replace the sash without disrupting the frame and the surrounding roofing. If it's older than 2011, we're going to suggest a full replacement, because parts previous to 2011 aren't available.
I can tell you what I train interns, and I learned very early on that if there is any staining on the inside of the house around the skylight, I always recommend evaluation by a licensed contractor, because we have dry times, and we usually see it in the corners of the skylight, and clients will tell me, well, it's not on the wall, so it's not an issue. Like, it doesn't have to be on the wall for it to be an issue.
Right.
That's what we really run into. And as home inspectors, on opening and closing skylights, if they are able to, I was taught, at least, I don't know what your opinion is, we don't test them. Like, I will not open a skylight because I always worry if it doesn't shut, that's an issue.
When I go on home consultations, I'm the same way. First thing I ask, if I know it's an operating skylight, I ask, when's the last time you opened and shut this? If they say I haven't done it in years, I'm not touching it either. If they say, oh, just the other day I had it open, then I know they have some reasonable expectation of performance. So yeah,
we have another question from Carrie. Can you provide price ranges for your products?
Yes, I can. They'd be based on list price, and depending on what you are looking for. So I can provide ranges for fixed, manual, and a solar venting. So a fixed skylight could range anywhere from about $340 to about $600 per unit, plus about $100 for flashing kit. And that would be both the unit and the flashing kit are required for complete installation on that. If you go to a manual venting, so you're either doing a crank handle or the long pole to reach the unit to open and close it, you're talking anywhere between the $600 and $1,000 range, depending on size, and you're about $120 for flashing kit. And then our solar units range anywhere from $1,300 to about $1,850 for the unit, and about $120 for the flashing. So there's quite a different range depending on what you're looking for. I didn't really talk about this, but when we're talking about anything with our solar products for the next 10 years qualify for the solar property electric energy cost. So when a homeowner installs a unit with anything solar, so we're talking about our solar venting skylight and our solar shades that can get installed into our units, when they do that, they qualify for a 30% solar tax credit. So if you guys are recommending, evaluation by a licensed contractor, and the contractor says these units are shot, we need to talk about replacement. This tax credit, if they put like a fixed unit with a solar blind, or a solar venting unit, or just a manual venting with a solar blind in it, as long as they use something solar in that skylight, they get that 30% tax credit, which is materials and labor all incorporated. So say you buy a $1,500 skylight and the contractor charges $1,500 to install it, you got a $3,000 bill. The homeowner's going to get a $900 tax credit back from that project based on that tax credit. So just kind of something to keep in the back of your head about the tax credit. And you know, if you get a customer asking more questions, that's where you can get me involved, and you can get me to talk to the homeowners about all that type of tax credit usage and stuff.
Steve, you can customize. A customer can order, you know, if they take out a skylight that's you know, an odd size, can you customize? Can you guys customize the skylight to a certain degree?
To a certain degree, certain units we can. So a fixed curb mount can be made in a custom size. We also have what we call a thermal light, which is a copper pan flash unit that can be made in custom sizes. And it's a little bit different application. That's something where we'd want to get, you know, make sure we have a contractor that is familiar with our custom sizes, or you can get me involved in that project, or recommend they contact me, and I would be able to talk to the homeowners. I work with homeowners a lot, contractors a lot, so I have no problem with you guys being able to say, hey, let's reach out to Steve and get this taken care of when it comes down to time of your clients moving forward with recommendations.
Can you comment on solar panels? On, you know, if a roof has skylights, should the solar panels, do they affect the skylight? Should they be a certain distance away?
Yeah, that's a good question. We want to stick with that about that 12-inch barrier around the skylight, just so we know that any type of structural support that they're installing for the panels are not interfering with the flashing and the operation of the skylight.
Great.
Plus, easy repair too, right, Steve? You want to be able to repair the flashing and get to it if you had to, or take the skylight out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if there's not any other questions, I want to thank you for the presentation tonight. It's greatly appreciated. This was extremely informative, and I see somebody's clapping. So thank you for coming. And
thank you very much, Steve, for your time.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you.